My guest today is filmmaker Carson Lane, and she studied screenwriting at the Mike Curb College of Arts, Media, and Communication at California State University in Northridge. Now, her script, Triumph, was one of less than 3.5% of the scripts on the blacklist to have earned a score of 8. And her writing has been recognized by the AFF, Page, Screencraft, and many others. But it is her directorial debut short film, Whole, which we are talking about today, which stars David Pasquesi from VEEP and was an official selection in the HollyShorts Comedy Film Festival as well as the Pasadena International Film Festival. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome filmmaker Carson Lane and her short film Whole to the show. So, welcome, Carson.
Hi, thank you.
Well, what led you into filmmaking?
I've always loved movies, and I've always loved writing and art and photography, and film is kind of the marriage of all of that.
Well, before we get into talking about your short film Whole, tell me about this script that you wrote called Triumph that earned a very high score on the blacklist.
Yeah, so that I actually wrote that in college. I studied screenwriting at Cal State Northridge, and that was like my senior project. And that is about Lenny Riefenstahl. I don't know if you're familiar with who she is. She's a very controversial person. She created Triumph of the Will, which was Hitler's propaganda film. So she's kind of responsible for how successful the Nazi party was with their propaganda. Um, and I just thought she was an interesting character because she was a woman in the 30s and 40s who just wanted to be a legendary filmmaker, and she kind of, you know, she gave in to the evil to earn that for herself. So we still talk about her in film school, but it's with that heavy footnote that she's a horrible person.
Well, besides the Nazi connection, that's a very big media story with her because she knew how to use propaganda properly, which back in the day, we would probably call it a great marketing campaign.
Yeah, yeah,
And I'm sure that if they're still teaching her in film school, there's a lot of things to be learned, I guess, on the positive side of things. But did you just submit the script to the blacklist?
yeah. You can buy reviews. So I bought a review, and the first one I got was an 8, and that's pretty rare. So I thought that was cool.
Wow, I did not know that they would go in such a very high, or I should say, not many scripts get a high rating from the blacklist. So that's a pretty great accomplishment. Now, by getting that score, did it lead to anything else into your career in filmmaking?
I've had a few people who love it and are interested in it, but um, it's just a very touchy subject, and it's also a very high budget film. So, um, I mean, when you're recreating like massive bases, like military bases and war zones, and it's a big project, and it's kind of a risk. So I think people are hesitant, even though they like it.
Yeah, I get that. Period pieces are not the cheapest things to
Yeah.
fund when it comes to feature length type films. But let's talk about this short film of yours called Whole. Where did you come up with the idea for it?
Um, it was just kind of a silly thing I thought of one night about how um, people take things too seriously sometimes, and that's really like the core of the idea. Some things, I think art is a great example of that. Some art is very meaningful and everything is symbolic, but some art is just art, and that's okay, and that doesn't make it bad. And I think sometimes we get a little too carried away with finding that obsessive, like, what is the meaning? What does this mean? And um, so this case is obviously he gets so carried away that it destroys everything in his life.
Yeah, it was kind of funny because, here's this film about a man who stands in front of a painting at an art gallery, unloads all his feelings to the artist, and from his, like you said, from his interpretation, from what he sees. But what starts out as a serious monologue actually moves into something very comedic. Uh, why did you want to do it that way?
I like the idea of it not looking or being more than it appears, which is also ironic for the what the film is about. But I liked that it seems serious at first, and then it just gets more and more absurd. Um, and I also love that tactic in filmmaking, especially low budget filmmaking, where you kind of make the audience use their imagination, and that's what makes it funny. It's just him talking, but in your mind you're seeing a train running off the tracks and the house exploding and him throwing up all over the car, and like that has always been something that I liked and as a creative tool.
Yeah, I laughed as the film kept moving along and he kept unloading all of this. And then you start to realize, wait a minute, then it gets really crazy.
Yeah.
And but to see him unload his whole life to you because you're playing the artist in the film and to come to find out that all he was staring at was a hole, which you in the film you found it funny, but I was looking at it like, dude, it's just a hole in a painting. Chill out.
Yeah.
And and like for you, for the audiences that have seen this film, what are some of the things that they tell you?
um I had someone tell me that she was in a film that was a similar premise, but Whole was just way more to the point. And I kind of credit my one of my producers, Tyler Langford. My original script had the artist kind of explaining like that it was an accident, but she thought it was funny, and she knew that someone in an art gallery would attach all this meaning to it, and even though it's nothing. Um, and then Tyler was like, "I think you should just not explain it." And so we cut all that out, and I agree. It works really well, straight to the point.
No, it does. Yeah, I wouldn't have it explained it beforehand because it's kind of like when he gets done unloading all of his emotions and feelings, then that moment has a better punch because then you're like, really, dude, what is wrong with you? And it's funny
Yeah,
because, I can see how art galleries can bring out the weirdness in people. There
yeah,
are, I love art galleries, but I won't stand there to interpret it uh, like I do with film. I just want to read the little plaques by the
yeah,
paintings or the works of art to read the history and then just move on to the next one.
yeah. Me
'Cause yeah,
too.
I don't want to try to find any of the meaning of it, especially like if you get into modern art. Most modern art I cannot stand, and I don't find any meaning in whatever it is.
Mhm.
And but this film was kind of funny. I mean, did you go to any art galleries, just kind of stand around and people watch?
No, but I did. I mean, in film school, I kind of ran into this a lot where other students would really try to overanalyze things, and I think that's one thing you learn in film school is like how to properly analyze something, and sometimes you don't need to hold a magnifying glass to everything.
Yeah, that's the thing about film. Some film is just it when you see it from beginning to end. There's no surprises to it. And then there are films you look at and you're like, what are they trying to say?
Yeah.
And then that's when you have to start peeling back the layers to try to understand what they're trying to convey to the audience, because some of these films, especially with short films, a lot of them, they are, I guess, very heavy on the cinematic side. Some stories are vague and they're expecting the audience to piece it together. I don't want to look at films where you have to sit there for hours and then finally figure it out. And then with some, I find that the log lines are either good or they're not good enough. And then some log lines give the whole film away and it's no use in watching it.
Yeah. Yeah. I have been using this example. It's kind of stupid, but I love disaster movies, and they're just stupid. They're simple. They're entertaining, and like you don't have to analyze it. And I love very complex character driven stories that you can watch multiple times and get something different every time. But sometimes you just want a disaster movie and you enjoy it in the moment and then you never think about it again. And I think there's room for both of those.
Oh, yeah, of course there is. And now, when it comes to writing a short film, that would you place this one as just comedy or would you call it dark comedy?
We've been calling it dark comedy.
How is it more difficult to write a comedic piece than it is a drama?
Um, I think so personally because everyone's humor is so different. So something that I think is hilarious, someone else won't think is funny at all. But drama, everyone's kind of on the same page. So that's my struggle with it.
Uh, Okay, so how many now? But this is your first short film, correct? So since this is more of a dark comedy, have you written others that you're exploring that may be different genre?
Other short films?
Yeah.
Um, I've written a few. I've written a drama and I've written another even shorter comedy. And again, like the comedy, I think it's funny when I tell people sometimes they're funny, but sorry, sometimes they laugh, but then sometimes they're like, oh. But it's it's just your personal sense of humor. And I'm not sure if I will make those short films, but they're definitely fun to write.
Well, are there any particular type of comedic style, let's say in feature films, that you like the best?
Um, Films, nothing comes to mind right now, but I used to love the show Louie by Louis C.K. That was like my favorite show in high school, and that's like that offbeat, weird, absurd comedy where like sometimes things happen and no one draws any attention to it, but it's just weird and then funny.
Well, then how did you come to cast actor David Pasquesi from VEEP for your film?
We had a mutual friend, and I asked, "Do you think you would be willing to do this?" It's like a micro budget, really small short film. We had like 10 people on our crew, and he sent it to David, and David liked it, and he was willing to do it. And I really appreciate David's work because um, I flew him out and he did this. We shot in one day, and the majority of the film is like a 5 minute monologue that he does, and he memorized that entire monologue and he did it in the first take all the way through.
I was going I was going to ask you because I kept thinking, did he do this all in one take? Or because of the way that you inserted the various paintings and art pieces in the midst of his monologue, I was like, you could slide in edit points and no one's ever going to know. But he did that whole monologue in one take.
Yeah, he did it all through, and then I decided before we shot that I wanted to insert the art, so just so the audience has something else to look at a little bit, and it also adds that it like increases the curiosity of like what does this painting look like, because you don't know until the end. And so I told him like we're gonna have quick little cuts, so if you need a line, it's okay. But he made it through the first time, and then we did two more takes where he would do things a little bit differently, or then once he got through it, I think then he was more relaxed and he could forget some, and it was not a big deal. So then we had different takes to choose from. So ultimately, we used pieces from all the takes, but I was really amazed that he memorized that.
Well, so did it make for a very short shoot? I mean, even though you got the whole thing done in one day, I mean, like, how many hours did it take?
I think it was like an 8 hour shoot, and I think we ended a little bit early too, earlier than we expected. And that was like arriving, unpacking, setting up, and then shooting, and then packing everything up and leaving. So it was pretty quick. It was like we were moving, but it was pretty quick.
Were you shocked that he did the first one in one take?
Yeah, yeah. And I told him, I was like, I can't believe you memorized all of that.
Now, when you moved into the frame, I mean, did you cut before you moved in? Or was the whole thing filmed in one fell swoop the first time around?
So everything was cuts except his monologue. So we had different setups. So his monologue, the camera was on a dolly, so that it could very very slowly move towards him. And then once we came out of that, we had multiple setups and multiple takes of our interactions.
Well, then okay, when you had the various paintings show up in the midst of his monologue, um, where did you get, uh, how would I say this? Where did you get the graphics for all of the paintings?
So all of the paintings I made myself. All of the artwork in the gallery I made myself, partly because I love art and doing it, but also because it is easier rights wise. You don't have to get permission to show it. So yeah, that was really fun. I made all of the artwork for a few months. And then I even had, I think I had 40 pieces of art total. And then we had a bunch that we didn't use. But once we got into the space, I chose where I wanted things to go. Um, and then as depending on what he says in the monologue, we would choose what image we wanted to flash.
I was wondering about that because I went back after I watched the film the first time. I went back and I started timing the gaps between each painting, and they were not the same. So you
Mhm.
were actually going by what he said and not just saying, we're going to insert one every 5 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah, so we would wait for a moment for a slight pause between his words.
So how many paintings did you end up putting into the film?
I don't know. I don't know how many. Because we would, my husband is the editor, so we would sit together and just, we would we would mark spots in his monologue, and then we would try different paintings and we'd move them around. And so I don't even know.
I'm still amazed that you were the one that did all the paintings. I
Thank you.
mean, did you paint or did you design all of these in computer?
Oh no, they're all paint. They're all tangible. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So we like filled out an SUV and it was like totally packed with paintings when we headed over to shoot.
So you had to take the paintings with you to the shoot?
Yeah, the gallery is a beautiful gallery in near Echo Park in LA, and it's a working gallery. So we rented it out for the day, but um, they have they have art in the gallery. So we moved out all of that art because we're not allowed to show it, um, and then we brought in our own stuff, and they were like, don't use nails in the walls. So then we used command strips for all of them. And we had a couple just like fall off the wall, but
Yeah. I never trust command strips. You know, they
yeah,
tell you it'll hold up. Oh, it'll hold up 20 pounds. No, it won't.
yeah. And same with the opening shot when there's like the little glass teacups on the stairs. I went to a thrift store and I found those teacups, and then I found there's like a tall red vase that looks like it matches the teacups, but that was a completely different thing I found, and I arranged them. So yeah, it was literally months of me messing around, painting, shopping. I like using mixed media in the art, so a lot of it is like vintage magazines that I cut things out of. So some of them are like Life magazines from the 60s that I found in an antique store. So there's a lot to look at, even though it's just a second.
Yeah, because this film is only what, 10 minutes long?
It's just under 8 minutes, including the
Okay,
credits. So
that's right. Yeah, I mean, I'm really amazed that you did all the paintings. I
thank you.
mean, and then with his monologue, how long did it take you to write that? And then when
Uh,
you wrote it out, were you just trying to time it out, or it just didn't really matter how long it took?
um, for the overall script, I wanted it to be as short as possible. But for the monologue, I didn't really cut anything that I had originally put in there because I wanted it to naturally evolve. So it begins serious and then it gets more and more absurd, and like you can't really rush that. And I liked all of the little jokes and everything that were in there. And I actually, when I first connected with David, 'cause he's a really good improv comedian. So I was like, "Is there anything you want to change? Like you can change stuff." Um, and he was like, "No, I think now that I understand that we're starting serious and getting into the absurd, I think as it is fine."
Wow, so he must have been really impressed with your writing.
Yeah, I hope so.
Well, so you appeared at the Holly Shorts Comedy Film Festival as well as the Pasadena International Film Festival. What was the response to the film like?
People loved it. People laughed a lot, and it's It was interesting at the Pasadena festival. That was our first, like, our premiere, and that festival is not all comedy. So the different blocks are all different genres of short films, and the we were second in that block, and the first one was a very serious, sad film. Um, it was very good, but it was very sad. It was about like abused dogs, and so like my family, my mom and my stepmom, and my sister were all watching it, and I was like, "This is really intense. Like my film is going to be after this. Are people going to like be willing to laugh about mine?" And then mine starts serious, and then there were like some giggles, and then some people kind of started laughing a little more, and then like the audience kind of plays off each other, and they're like, "Oh, like this is funny," and then they all started laughing, and then towards the end, there were some big laughs.
Well, that's a good thing because, I've talked to other filmmakers and we've kind of talked about how some of these blocks are created. And sometimes, I'm not mentioning any names of films, but some of them would go, "Oh, yeah, we were after such and such," and either they didn't like the film that was before theirs, or they
Mhm.
were like, "Oh, why did they put that one in front of ours?" Because then you sometimes get those films that they have the tendency to win everywhere they go.
Yeah.
And then you get stuck either following it. And I think with films like that, either put them at the beginning, um,
Mhm.
because it's not fair to the other ones. And I think if film festivals pick up films that have a long winning track record, don't put them last in the block because it's not fair to the others. Just put them at the very
Yeah.
beginning of the block, kind of
Mhm.
make the playing field a little easier. So the block you were in was not a full comedic block?
No, and I think they started with the heaviest one, and then mine was kind of like the relief, and then they got into the other. There were a few. Um, I think most of them were dramas after that. But in my film, there's a mention of their pets, and there's like they have like a legless cat, and and there's I don't remember what it is. It's like the three-legged dog or something. And I like shot over and looked at my my stepmother. I was like, "Oh my god!" After that horrible animal abuse movie, I'm making fun of legless dogs, but people laughed. I think they needed the relief from that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if a film festival is not going to have genre blocks and they're going to mix it up, then you have to mix it up to where if you have a serious drama, don't follow it with another one. You've
Yeah,
you've got to break it up. And
yeah,
because I know that the majority of the short films out there seem to be on the dramatic, dark, sad
yeah.
side, um, which some of them it's fine, but I'm really happy with the crop of films this year. There are
Mhm.
those films, but then there are those that a lot of people are trying to move away from that. And so many filmmakers that I talked to this year said, no, we didn't want to go the whole dark, sad route because there's plenty of those.
Yeah,
We want to do something that it's more like this world needs more laughter at the moment.
yeah. And in film school, actually, when I took a short film class, my professor was like, "You are not allowed to have anyone dead or die in your film because apparently that is what everyone runs to immediately, because it's just an easy way to get emotion into the film." And she's like, "No, you need to write a real story. You can't rely on someone dying."
Yeah, and here's the thing. A lot of filmmakers don't keep track of the films that win awards. And if people go back and start studying the films that won, now this is a very complex type subject because I had to break it down because there are things that I couldn't figure out in the beginning. Like if you look at the European market, the European filmmakers, or I should say, the award shows across the Atlantic, like the BAFTAs,
Mhm.
IFTA, the European Film Awards. If you watch those and see who wins, you understand that that audience and those members, they know how to vote on a film.
Mhm.
Because usually the rules are far stricter over there where you're not allowed to campaign.
Oh, yeah.
You come over here and the film award ceremonies are far different. And you also see that the types of films that are voted on don't match the ones in Europe. So you get all the award winners in Europe, you bring them here and you're wondering why they don't win. Is
Mhm.
because here you're allowed to campaign, which manipulates how the voting is done.
Yeah, I think that's a misconception that audiences have about award shows. They get so frustrated when certain movies don't win, and it's not because the movie isn't better necessarily, it's because they didn't have a stronger campaign. And
That's
I think a lot of people who know that are not happy that that's the way it's done.
yeah, and I really wish the Academy would change the rules and make their rules more equal to what BAFTA. BAFTA doesn't allow campaigning, even though there are ways around some of that. But when you look at the Academy, I have seen films that had very low budgets. I get, on a feature side, when Sean Baker's Nora he only spent 6 million to make it. He spent 18 million campaigning.
Yeah, I heard that.
You
So
know,
people were like praising it for being an independent film that won, but like that campaign wasn't independent.
no, it wasn't. And if you look at the Brutalist, which cost 60 million to make, but they didn't spend anywhere near what Sean Baker's team spent, and there was no profit on the Brutalist.
Mhm.
And so I think that area, and this is why, and of course, now we know that the rules have changed at the Academy because now everybody has to watch the films if you want to vote.
Yeah.
Which is the weird
Really?
thing. Like, shouldn't you been watching them for the last 50, 60 years anyway?
Yeah.
So it makes no sense whatsoever. And so, so when I look at the films now, and like I tell young filmmakers, watch watch who wins. See who's winning and then try to look as to why. But the thing is you have to understand that the audiences are always different. So with the Academy, heartfelt, warm and fuzzy usually wins above the shocking and the dramatic. But see, like the BAFTAs this year, rock, paper, scissors won, and that was a dramatic. I'm not going to say it was a war piece, but it was modern day because it was Russia, Ukraine, and they won. And even though I had a feeling they were going to win, it was still a shock in the end. But the Academy always seems to vote on the warm, fuzzy side. So, and but that's just the way the members are. Now, you also appeared at the HollyShorts Comedy Film Festival. Now, I know that how much different is their Holly Shorts' genre related film festivals compared to, let's say, Holly Shorts that's coming up in the next week or so?
I'm not totally sure. I think the genres obviously are smaller. They they were pretty small blocks. I'm not sure if the block I had was like at 7 p.m. I think on like a Friday or a Saturday. The theater was pretty full, but it was one theater. So I think maybe if there's something that they really like in a genre, they'll just keep it for the genre festival, and then the the bigger festival is the overall Holly Shorts.
Yeah, yeah. Now, have you submitted whole to other film festivals?
Yeah, and we're actually going to Foot Candle in North Carolina in September. So that will be our third screening.
Wow, wow. This is I love the way that you did this film. And uh and I love the backstory on how you put this whole film together, because a lot of people don't realize how much work it takes to make a short film. Of course, I've talked to others that are just like you. You made the short film in a day. There's others it takes them 3, 4, 5, 6 days to film the short film. But just to hear how the film is made, I think gives other young filmmakers ideas, and I think it inspires a lot of them to realize you can do this too.
Yeah, and it's I mean, you should be making films because you like it. And a lot of, I mean, every day I'd come home from work and work on my art for the film. And like, it wasn't like, oh, I have to get this done. It was like, I can't wait to work on my art. And then I can't wait to choose what goes in the background or what flashes between his monologue. And like, it was a big labor of love from not just me, but all of our crew. I didn't pay them. I couldn't pay them. So I bought them food and coffee, and like that was it. And like everyone was there cuz they wanted to create art together.
So what did you do with the 40 pieces of art?
I still have a lot of it. um, there's one hanging on the wall across from me, and then some of them I paint over. I think a lot of artists will get tired of something they did and paint over it. And I've been considering trying to sell some of it, like opening an Etsy shop or something, but I don't know. I still have it all.
Yeah, yeah, you could definitely sell it, maybe finance your next film, and maybe have David autograph the back of all of them and said
Yeah,
featured in the film whole.
yeah, yeah, maybe I should.
I
I have the
love
whole one. I'm keeping the whole.
Oh, you have to keep that one.
Yeah.
That one is the reason for the whole film. And so yeah, yeah, definitely don't get rid of that one. But ladies and gentlemen, Carson Lane's short film Hole isn't about filling the emptiness in your life, but it seems to fill the hole up with all the mess in your life. So, of course, everyone has a different perspective now that we know that art is in the eye of the beholder. But David Pasquesi takes it a bit too far, which is both dark and comical at the same time. Again, I'm like, chill out, dude. It's just a painting. And Carson, I want to thank you so much for sharing your film with me today.
Thank you so much.
Well, you're very welcome. And ladies and gentlemen, you can catch all of the Bond on Cinema interviews at bondoncinema.com. Check out our Prime show, our YouTube channel, and of course, you can listen to us on your way to work on Spotify, iTunes, Audible, and more. And as I always say, you're either going to see me at the movies or from the red carpet.